My family and I have always been horror junkies. It may be weird to say, but I'm glad my parents and brother watched almost nothing but horror movies when I was little. And I meant that literally. We had a collection of movie discs. Only 6 were not of that genre. It certainly made my younger years easier in that fear section of my brain. After years of them, you could probably say it was inevitable I'd end up the same kind of junkie as them. So needless to say, when Halloween rolled around, you bet your ass we went all out. We had exactly 7 skeleton props, about 15 different old creepy dolls, intentionally broken, ripped, and smeared in dirt, along with 2 separate life-size clown mannequins, not including the large Pennywise statue. We'd display them all to play out various acts. My favorite of which being the skeletons climbing on top of the roof. Above all of these, however, was our scarecrow Jack. It was something my family had always done. Can't even really remember why we started it, but building him has since become a tradition. Think of it like a snowman you'd build during winter, just with a Halloween vibe. The body would match that of a standard scarecrow. A hay-stuffed costume. Usually we gave him a Jack Skellington suit, and that's because we always made his head a jack-o'-lantern, one with a painted-on face, neon paint to give the effect it was. We never really carved due to the fact that I protested the idea of cutting into Jack's head heavily, an ultimately pointless attempt as he would end up scalped and gutted for a pie, say for the year of my 16th birthday. That's because Jack went missing overnight. We chalked it up to some teens grabbing him like a lot of people will take down street and road signs, and while we were definitely a bit upset about losing the costume, we ultimately shrugged it off as a no big deal. After all, the costume wasn't some overly detailed suit. It was something you'd get from Party City, and the only other thing lost were a pile of hay and a pumpkin. Fall and spring came and went, and I was soon approaching the end of the school year. While I wasn't a terrible student, there was something about time that brought out the delinquent side of me. I'd start putting little to no effort into work, would leave class to get the 20-minute drink from the water fountain, and even played hooky a couple days. It was one of these days when I ran into Jack once more. I had been spending the day on the couch, channel surfing, playing video games, anything but the stuff I shouldn't have been, when suddenly the fuse box must have blown out or I lost all power. Now again, I was technically in school at the moment, so I couldn't exactly call my parents and tell them the power was out at our home that nobody was at. So it was up to me to go around back of the house and fix it up myself. Should have just sat in the dark for a few hours. The moment I stepped outside, I knew something was wrong. We were in the middle of a heat wave, yet all I felt was cool breezes, and the sky was a dull gray veil of clouds. Despite the fact I could see through the windows all day, had been sunny with not a cloud to be seen in the crystal blue sunshine. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine that I brushed off as just the sudden breeze catching me off guard. But deep down, I knew it was much more than the wind putting me on the edge. My fears being confirmed as I rounded the corner of the house to see Jack, standing on his hay-stuffed legs. His tacky suit had been shredded to hell, revealing various insects taking residence in and feeding off his body. His head had been half caved in due to rot, and most of his paint had faded away, as his just barely visible red mouth began opening, the area in which it had been painted on, now slowly tearing open. Brown rotted pumpkin guts and seeds began spewing out of the flesh opening as what sounded like gargled screeches began filling the air, as the creature began taking long, unnatural strides towards me, his feet never lifting once, more so dragging his legs than walking. Loud snaps could be heard as his arms unnaturally contorted until they were reaching out to grab me. I tried to run or yell something, but I was completely paralyzed in fear and confusion. My brain simply couldn't process what was happening enough to comprehend if it really was happening until he was face to face with me. Suddenly, my body went into full throttle adrenaline, and I threw my fist through his rotting head, only for the pumpkin flesh to tighten, closing around my hand and ensuring it as he reached up, grabbed my throat, hundreds of thin pieces of straw pressing up against it like needles. I thought he was gonna pierce right through my neck. In a final act of desperation, I used my free hand, slowly forced my palm between my trapped hand and the rotting pumpkin before prying upwards with all my strength. It was a rotting fruit, yet it felt like I was trying to tear an iron-covered phone book in half. My fingers literally started to bleed to the amount of force I was putting in, but my adrenaline was on full blast. All I could think of was freeing myself. Its loud, gurgly screeches intensified, and its sharp grip tightened until suddenly everything went black. When I came to, I was lying in front of the completely undamaged fuse box as the hot summer sun beamed down on me. I shot up and frantically scanned my surroundings, seeing nothing but crystal blue skies. I let out a large sigh of relief, chalking it up to a bizarre dream as I began to rub my face to try and bring myself back to reality, to feel a slimy substance begin to coat my throat. I could feel myself break into a cold sweat as I looked down to my shaky hand, still covered in rotten pumpkin guts.